Hello everyone, welcome to the Full Time Podcast. We're with Dad for episode 3 of season 2, and we're going to talk about every team's start of the season. We're going to go from top to bottom. West Ham second as well this season at the moment. We'll obviously start off with Man City, getting off with how you'd expect. Is that the same for you?
I think so. They're doing what they normally do, aren't they? Starting steadily, getting the results they need. Pep tends to be good at getting his teams to improve as the season goes on, and I'm expecting that's what we'll see. I think it's interesting to see who they're signing at the moment. They're going for different types of players, perhaps to what they've had before, ball carrying players more than perhaps some of your more traditional box-to-box midfielders. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Pep changes the way they play this season. But I think they've started the way you'd expect them to start, really. And some of the players that were on the fringes last season, Alvarez for example, and one or two of the defenders are starting to come through now and looking very sharp. So I think they're going to be the one to beat again, aren't they?
Yeah, they had a nervy result against Sheffield United. They won 2-1, they obviously got the job done, but they had 22%, but Sheffield United had about 18% possession, and Man City dominated them but only just got the result. Whether that says something about different teams, it could, say something, but I think it'll just be a solid season.
I think it was the same with Newcastle though, wasn't it? That was a narrow win, but I think teams are setting up more and more to just try and defend deep against them and hit them on the break. I think more teams have accepted now that's the only way they might beat them, which is why I think Pep is trying to sign different sorts of players now, because they're going to have to carry the ball more into the opposition's half rather than sort of passing it around them. I don't think that option is going to be as easy for them. So they've won a couple of games by sort of one goal, but they've won, haven't they? And that's the important thing, and that's what championship winners do. They find a way to win games, and City have got really good at that over the last few seasons, and it looks like they're starting that way again. Nobody expects Man City to start like start at 100 miles an hour, because they never do they? But know that if they're thereabout at Christmas, if they're in the top 2 or top 3, it's the second half of the season and they tend to kick on and be really strong, and I would expect that to be the same. And you've got to remember as well, they've won those 2 games with no De Bruyne, so arguably their best players out now, so not going to expect them to be at full tilt for a while, but they're doing enough.
I think Haaland does still do the same sort of stats he did last season.
I don't know if he'll get quite as many goals as last season, because I think, even though he can score against anyone, but I think people will be more will have thought more about how to stop him. They'll be more used to the threat. You still can't stop him all the time, can you? I still expect him to be heading towards 30 goals for the season, but whether he can do quite the same numbers as last season. The thing with Haaland is, he might only score 1 or 2 for 2 or 3 games, and then all of a sudden he'll bag a hat-trick in 20 minutes, won't he? So, you're always looking at a player that's dangerous at any time, really. So, it's going to be interesting. I've been impressed by them, but not blown away. But they don't need to blow people away at the moment. They're winning games.
Yeah. Now West Ham, who were surprisingly second, and I think that some of our signings, we lost Declan Rice. That we thought that would be. I predicted, was it 2 places off relegation, but we're looking superb with Ward-Prowse. He's already got 2 assists and a goal. And he's just a lot more attackingly mindseted than Declan Rice was. Do you think we're better without Declan Rice in a way at the moment?
It's a bit early to say that. I think the first 3 games, though, it's been certainly the last 2 at least, it's been a boys' masterclass. I think we've gone back to doing what we were doing when we were 6th and 7th in the league, accepting that we're not going to outplay teams with possession, and instead we are, hitting teams on the break, defending deep, and playing to our strengths. And I think now what we've actually done is swap Declan Rice for players that can help us do that. I love Declan. It's easy, isn't it, after somebody's gone to start saying, oh, well, I wish it had been, different with him and all this sort of thing. he was a brilliant player for us, but I did feel like in his last season with us, it was like we were having to play everything through him. And we went and watched him a lot, didn't we? And a lot of the time, you know, we'd pass it back to him and the football would sort of slow down. It felt like we were waiting for Declan to dictate the play. Doesn't feel like that this season. It feels like as soon as we get the ball, we're looking to break fast and get it, you know, to the forward players quickly. And Ward-Prowse is very good at that. You know, very good at quick passing, spots the opportunity. You know, now we've signed Kudus.
Yeah.
And, you know, with him on one side, Bowen on the other, and an informed Mickey Antonio, that's a scary strike force for any defence. I think we're looking okay. I think with one or two more signings, I think we need another powerful striker to play the way that Moyes likes to play, and I think we need probably at least a left back. But if we can get those signings in, yeah, we're looking all right for this season. And I mean, getting a win at Brighton and beating Chelsea at home, not only are they good results in their own rights, but it's like those games are out of the way now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I always worry about going to Brighton. You always think, well, we're not going to get anything out of that one. You know, anything more than a draw against Chelsea at home is a bonus. And we've taken 6 points from them. And we needed them as well because we've got tough games to come. I think we've got Liverpool and Man City.
Yeah. How do you think we can hold up against them?
I mean, I wouldn't expect us to beat Man City because I never expect anybody to beat them, really. But who knows? If confidence is up, and you know, at the moment we've started the season playing the best football on the break, and we've been playing for a while, unbeaten, second in the league. I mean, West Ham have got Luton on Friday night, and you know, obviously we all think we should go there and win. It would be a very West Ham thing to do, to win away at Brighton and then go and lose at Luton. But if we can win that one and go into the international break with 10 points, I don't think we had 10 points last season until about the end of November. So, you know, that would be a really positive start. And I like the way that the players are talking. You know, they're all talking about putting right what went wrong last season. Saw Jarrod Bowen's interview after the game against Brighton, and he said we're going back to what we do well, playing on the break football, defending deep. It's not always easy as a fan because you're very, you know, if you're going to give the other team 70% of the ball, it can make you quite anxious, you know, quite nervous watching. It's, you know, it's always easier to watch your team dominate possession, but when it works, it's exciting. And you know, we've got 2 results probably that people didn't expect us to get against Chelsea and Brighton. Probably should have beaten Bournemouth away. Should be sitting joint top with 9 points there, really. Yeah. But as it is, I'm happy, but it's early days. You know, we've got to prove it now against Luton, back up the good results, and then let's see where we can go from there. Obviously, Europe starts in a few weeks' time, and we know how tough that is to play Thursday night and Sunday. So it's going to be interesting to see how things happen and what happens in the last bit of the transfer window.
I mean, you can take it as having however much possession, 22% against Brighton, and still winning. You can take that as a bonus that we can win with 22% possession, or no, it's not looking great for the season if we're going to let teams, because teams that on their day have 80% possession against us would easily beat us. And then even against Chelsea we had 10 men and managed to beat them. Chelsea didn't look brilliant that game, but there's still a Chelsea side who are worth about 600, 700 million, you know, so that's the bonus as well. We'll move on to Tottenham, who started the season with a draw to Brentford and then have had 2 solid wins against Manchester United and who else? Was it?
Who did they beat in the last game? I tend not to take too much notice of it when Tottenham get a win, but anyway, yeah, they've won two games, haven't they, so far? I don't like saying it. Yeah, I don't like saying it, but I think they look like quite a good team. You know, I mean, the fact, you know, that he's brought Bazuma back in and he's playing the way that he was playing at Brighton again, with even more licence to sort of get forward now, that's dangerous because he's a very good player. So I think, you know, any hope that Kane going was going to see Tottenham slide down the table and struggle. Yeah. He's already looking a little bit, you know, a little bit optimistic. I think
lost in the EFL Cup.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, their priority this season will be to get back up the league. You know, ideally top 4. I'm sure if they make the top 6 in Postecoglou's first season, they would consider that you know, a good return after last year. And you know, without that Europe, without the cup now, they're going to be one of the freshest teams in the league every week. You know, you know, the freshest team in the league with some, you know, players that can play very fast on the breaks. On Kulusevski, very good player. They're going to be dangerous against a lot of teams, and they, you know, they weren't very good last season because it all fell apart a bit under, you know, under Conte, didn't it? But even without Harry Kane, they've got some very good players, and if they hold on to them all, which it looks like they probably will, until you know, so the transfer window finishes, it's going to be interesting. If I was a Tottenham fan at the moment, I would be excited because they've got a manager for the first time in a long time, you know, really the first time since Pochettino, that wants to play positive attacking football. You know, they've had Mourinho, they've had Conte, you know, they've had managers, and you just think, why have Spurs got that manager? You know, Spurs like playing attacking football. They've got this squad of exciting attacking players, and now they're going to start using them properly. So hard to call where they're going to finish. You know, it could be anywhere between 4th or 5th and 10th or 11th, just because of the strength of the league. But yeah, it's a positive start, which pains me to say it, but credit where it's due. The manager's come in and turned it around very quickly.
Yeah. Liverpool now, who we saw the game against Newcastle. Nunes actually looks quite good at his finishing now. We said last season, or whenever he joined Liverpool, that he probably just needs to get his finishing ability on point to be a top player, and it looks like from the games he's played in that he has. And yeah, they sit 3rd now, unbeaten, draw to Chelsea, win against Bournemouth, win against Newcastle, which the Newcastle one at St James's Park with 10 men as well. They didn't look like they had 10 men on the pitch. But yeah, some solid results. How do you think they can do against some of the big teams, which they'll need to beat to probably get top 4, which will be their aim this season?
I feel like Liverpool are probably the hardest team to call this season. You know, once they went down to 10 men against Newcastle, you know, I was fearing for them, especially losing Van Dijk.
Yeah.
I was thinking, crikey, this could be 4 or 5. But fair play to them. I mean, we watched the game, didn't we? And you know, they came back brilliantly. And as you say, Nunes, it could be like a new signing if he finds his confidence and his goal scoring touch this season, because you know, they've got options, haven't they, all over the pitch as well. That's the other interesting thing about Liverpool. You know, they can play different ways, different players. They've got, you know, they can play with 3 completely different sort of attacks depending on which combination of strikers they go for. You know, Jota gives you something, Gakpo gives you something different, Nunes gives you something else again. You know, and then they've got players all over the park that are dangerous. I still, at the moment, that midfield is unproven, isn't it? I mean, you know, like I say, fair play for getting the result against Newcastle. Great comeback, and they're showing signs of being back to the sort of form when they were, you know, a serious top 3, top 4 team. But it's early days. You know, one good win over Newcastle is not a season. It's one good win over Newcastle. I think they're still going to have to pull it out. You know, I think it'd be interesting to see how they do against us in a couple of games' time. You know, and against teams that sit a bit deeper against them, defend against them. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, interesting stuff. They made a lot of signings that I don't know about really. I don't know much about the players they've signed.
Yeah.
If they all come good, you know,
was looking good.
he looks really good, doesn't he?
Did against Bournemouth.
Yeah.
McAllister's doing well.
Yeah. But interestingly, they haven't really signed any defenders, have they? And I thought last season the defence was. I know people said they.
Well, most things were.
You know,
yeah. Midfielders.
You know, most people went through the midfield, but yeah. So it'd be interesting to see if that defence stands up as the season goes on. really. Still, Alexander-Arnold is brilliant, isn't he? But he looks dodgy in defence. You know, if you get people
against Gordon as well.
Yeah, Gordon, he's on toast, isn't it? Really, I can't really understand why they took him off. That was a strange decision because the game seemed to switch on that. But anyway, yeah, I think, like I say, they're a bit like Tottenham in that they're hard to call, but you would expect them to be given massive confidence from that Newcastle win.
Yeah, Konate's having chances as well.
He is, yeah, and I'm glad to see it because I like him. I think he's a good defender, and they need that sort of steady defensive too, didn't they? Because when they were really good, you know, they had an absolute rock solid defence and built the whole team on that really, and then that gave the rest of the team confidence to attack. They didn't look like that last season. I'm surprised they haven't done a bit. I suppose it's difficult, isn't it? Because if you've got Alexander-Arnold, Robertson and Van Dijk, and then several other decent central defenders, who are you going to sign? What's the point in some ways? But I still think they look vulnerable at the back, particularly on that on their right hand side against good teams. So we shall see how it goes. But yeah, it's been a good start for them, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens this season.
Yeah. Now we've got Arsenal, who have had some good signings. They signed obviously Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, who's playing in midfield for them now. Do you think there's anything that, well, they drew to Fulham, they won against Forest, they just won against Forest, drew to Fulham and
Palace, didn't they beat Crystal Palace?
Then they beat Crystal Palace 1-0 as well. Again, it's all saying about big teams and how they can hold up against big teams. The Community Shield was a bit of a confidence boost for them and maybe a good look up to what they can do in the season against big teams. But that game, there was 14 minutes added on. It went to penalties. They won on penalties because De Bruyne hit the bar and everything. So yeah, I don't know whether Arsenal can be title challengers again. Although who else would there be? You know, I think Rice needs a bit more time to settle in. He hasn't been looking like a world class player for them. I think he'll just sit into their defence like a Thomas Partey or something. Just because at West Ham he was, because of the players around him and because of the way we played, he stood out because he dictated everything, as you said. So yeah, I don't think he'll be a standout player for Arsenal, but he's looking solid and he's helping them in midfield. Good replacement for Xhaka, who has left as well. So yeah, I think they've had a good start to the season as well, just winning games they need to. Obviously they need to beat Fulham, but on the games like Forest where they had a lot of pressure being put on them, at the end they did well. They managed to win that game, and then against Crystal Palace did what they needed to and got a win. Bit different against Fulham, but yeah, you know, it's a point. What can you do? How do you think they've started this season?
I think I mean, the results aren't fantastic, but I still think they look pretty impressive. And actually, you know, considering that he's trying to bed some new players in at the moment, I think losing Timber was quite a big loss for them. He's not had Jesus, you know, and he's trying to play a new midfield. Still not quite found out, I don't think yet, what he's going to do with Havertz. He's been doing this weird thing where he's played Partey at right back, hasn't he, and stuff. I'm not sure that will last for too long. I mean, the Fulham result isn't a good result, is it, on paper? And, you know, especially conceding a late goal like they did. But that's Arsenal, isn't it? You know, that's more like what we've got used to with them. I think the way they started last season was a surprise, you know, and I think it surprised a lot of people how good they were and how fast they went off. And now we're getting back to a bit more where people are perhaps showing them a bit more respect, defending a bit deeper against them again. They're having to break teams down. They're going to have to win matches, I think, in a different way this season. That's what I'm trying to get at. I think, you know, last season they were able to play some quite free-flowing football, you know, looked very, very good, had lots of possession. they'll still have that this season, but I think teams will sit back, soak it up a little bit more, try and hit them on the break, a bit like they do with Man City. And I think it's going to be harder for them to sort of sweep teams aside like they did last season.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think 7 points from the first 3 games, if you know, that's okay for them really. As you say, we've got to see how they kick on with this sort of slightly new look team. I think they're going to be there and thereabouts again. Whether they can keep pace with Man City all season.
Yeah.
You know, they started so well last year. You can't underestimate how many games you have to win and how relentless you have to be to stay in the hunt with Man City. You just have to win week after week after week. And last season, they started like that all the way up till Christmas and then slowly faded afterwards, didn't they? And obviously had that sort of disastrous end to the season. Realistically, are they going to get that many wins before Christmas? Maybe not, but I think if they're you know still within 5-6 points of Man City by that sort of point, they'd be very happy and would consider themselves in the hunt.
Yeah. How do you think they can do in the Champions League?
I mean, it's quite a young team. You know, you can see them coming up against some of those more experienced, savvy Champions League teams like your Real Madrids and your Bayern Munichs, and perhaps getting outwitted a little bit, you know, because those are teams that play Champions League football season after season. This new look Arsenal team doesn't fall into that category. But having said that, I think on their day, and they've already shown it against Man City, so you know, as you said in the community, on their day they could beat anyone. You know, you wouldn't say that about everybody in the Champions League necessarily. You know, on the day Arsenal could beat anybody else in the Champions League, and therefore I wouldn't say they're a favourite. But
Real Madrid on their day.
Well, I think they could. I think Arsenal can beat anyone on their day, but not necessarily. That doesn't make them a favourite because you don't expect them to win. That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't expect them to be, you know, the 4 or 5 biggest teams in Europe, but they could. You see what I mean? And I think that's perhaps. So a lot of it will depend how they start. If they start the tournament well, you know, do well in the groups and go into the sort of next stages with confidence. Alternatively, they could struggle a little bit and be playing us in the Europa League in early in the new year. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, the things chose to scroll down itself, so now you can't see the top 10. But I know Man United's in there. We'll do like all the
Brighton
big 6. Yeah. Actually, we'll talk about Brighton. We'll do the interesting ones. Everton's bottom as well. We'll do Everton. Brighton as well. They did lose McAllister, but they're not looking any worse. It was a surprising result against us, but I still think they can be solid. The problem is that they have European football, which you could maybe see some mistakes, fatigue, and maybe as well, because one of the reasons maybe that they came 6th last year was that they didn't have anything like in the way any other tournaments they had to worry about. They could just focus on getting European football, whereas this season it's different. What do you think about Brighton?
I mean, I think you can only be impressed with how they've started. They look like they're playing even better football than last season, and they played good football last season. It's incredible what they do there. They just seem to lose players that you think are world class, and then replace them with somebody else they've found that nobody's ever heard of, who's instantly world class again. I mean, it's just. It's a phenomenon, really. And you know, if you just said 4 or 5 years ago, if you just said Brighton are going to be, you know, one of the 3 best footballing teams in the league, and you know, in Europe, and genuine top 6 contenders for this season, you know, and that was when they had Potter and they looked, you know, they'd become a Premier League team. You'd still been going, you're having a laugh. You know, so just the journey they've been on is incredible. I mean, if you're a Brighton fan at the moment, you must be an absolute dreamland. I mean, you know, look what it's like as West Ham fans, you know, and you know, we've still got plenty to moan about, so Brighton must be delighted. I don't think you can read much into the game with us. They got well and truly moised against us. You know, they could have scored 20 goals, they didn't, and they got hit on the break by 3 very, very well taken, you know, quick break goals. But fundamentally, they were, you know, incredible against us. They were very strong in their other games as well. Obviously, people say it's all about getting the points, but the chances are that if you play that type of football week in, week out, you will get the points more often than not.
Yeah.
They're going to be exciting to watch, hard to stop. I think you're absolutely right. I think they will struggle a little bit once Europe kicks in, because as we've said, Thursday to Sunday is hard, especially if you haven't got 2 squads. Effectively, you need 2 squads to play in Europe. But yeah, they're going to be another one. It's going to be interesting to see where they finish. I don't think they'll be top 4. I might live to regret that. I don't think they will, but I think they're going to be right in the mix for top 6 and competing with you know, teams like Villa, Newcastle, maybe Spurs, maybe Liverpool, in that sort of ballpark again. And for Brighton to be in that sort of company now, with the money that they spend, which is nothing compared to anybody else, to have done it all based on their football system and their scouting, incredible. I mean, nothing but admiration for them. And I can say that now because West Ham have finally beaten them. You know, before, when we couldn't beat them, we haven't beaten them for absolutely years. You know, it was painful to say anything nice about them. But now we've beaten them, I don't care. I have to give them all the compliments in the world.
Right. Do you think maybe losing Potter was a blessing in disguise?
It's looking that way,
Deserving,
isn't it? I mean,
the top.
You know, where they've come up with him from, he looks, you know, it's just incredible what they've done. I mean, I haven't watched it that closely, but remarkable, really, to put another manager out the bag who plays even better football, and you know, they've managed to scout even better players than they had under Potter when they had some brilliant players. You know, and I mean, it's just mad, isn't it? You know, you look at players like Danny Welbeck, you know, who, all right, he's a decent player, I like Danny Welbeck, but you know, you just didn't see him being in a top 6, you know, team playing the sort of football they play, and it's just fantastic. I mean, Ferguson is going to be one of the best. You know, they're already saying he's going to be the next £100 million player. You know, it's crazy. It's like a production line of money-making talent. It's incredible. And you know, I'm sure if you could bottle whatever it is at the put in the water.
They bought Caicedo for, was it 4.2 million 2 years ago, and now 115 they've sold him for.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, the profit they're making on their team is just. He's mad. You know, and what's interesting as well, and I don't say this to be unkind to the players, is that a lot of players, well, not a lot, but several players that have left there don't look as good after they've left. You know, I'm thinking of people like Cucurella, and you know, they look like world beaters for Brighton.
Cucurella.
And you know, and then they leave, and it's a bit like, I'm not quite sure they're as good as we thought they were. But they were that good at Brighton because of the management and the way the team played. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. It's a long season for them to stay there and thereabouts. They managed it last season. Expectation has gone up. But if they keep playing the sort of football they play, just because of the way they are so good keeping the ball, they will beat more teams than they lose to. And so they can have another good season.
Yeah. Man United, who I don't think are actually 7th, but we're going through all the clubs that I know until 10. And they did see the result against Forest. They were 2-1 down and came back to win 3-2, surprisingly. And have had, what were the results?
Lost
to Spurs, yeah. They didn't look too good that game.
No.
They've just won against Forest. And then was it their first game?
They won their first game, didn't they? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was Monday night against Wolves, wasn't it? Which actually Wolves was a better team. So
yeah, I mean, I think that turnaround against Forest could be massive for them, because if you'd have taken a narrow win over Wolves, a defeat to Tottenham, and even a draw with Forest, you'd have been saying, "Oh, this is another poor start to the season for Man United." They had a terrible start last season, didn't they? Yeah, I mean, you know, lost to Brentford, didn't they? Got hammered, didn't they, against Brentford, and you know, looked in all sorts of bother at the start of last season, and it was looking like it might be a similar story this time round. I think, credit to them, and they've pulled it round. Fernandes was fantastic for them in helping them come back. They still look some way off, don't they? Considering there's only, 48 hours of the transfer, not even that, 24 hours of the transfer window left as we're recording this. They look a few world-class players off being, off being real title
Who do you
contenders.
think they need then?
I think last season they were very fortunate that Casemiro came in and I thought he was fantastic for them. I thought he was really, really good, and he made them look a better team. The early signs this season are he maybe not managed to keep the same form, so I think they need at least backup for him. Another option in there. I know they've got players like Fletcher and not Fletcher. Who they got in midfield? McTominay, not Fletcher. He retired, didn't he, years ago? McTominay in there, and but I think they need another world class holding midfielder. I mean, they're looking at buying Holberg, aren't they? That's in there. That's on the cards now. They've put in an offer in for Holberg. I think that would be a very good Ten Hag type signing.
Yeah.
They need a goal scorer, a striker. They can't rely on Rashford to the extent they did last season. I know they've signed the Dutch lad they've signed, but he didn't. Norwegian, sorry. The Norwegian they've signed, but yeah, they're not good in Holland. That's it. Sorry, yes. That's why I thought you were Dutch. They've signed him, and he could turn out to be a world beater. But it's a big jump from where he is at the moment to scoring the sort of number of goals that you'd expect Man United striker to score to turn them in. I mean, Man United will want to be title contenders and Champions League contenders.
Yeah.
And the start they've had suggests that they're still not much closer to that than they were last season. But, if Ten Hag can get some rhythm going, who knows? But yeah, I think they've not looked too impressive.
So what they did last season, they good.
I mean, last season was a good season for them. You know what I mean? Like, for the team they've got now, people have been saying it for a while now, but they are miles off Man City. They look some way off Arsenal, and Liverpool on recent seasons. I know many United fans won't like me saying that, but they have, consistently they've been some way off those teams. If they can get back in the mix with those teams on a more regular basis, then, realistically, that's where Man United probably can best hope to get to now. If you're old like me, and you remember Man United being dominant season after season, you have this thing where you kind of think, well, if they're not first or second, then Man United aren't having a great season. But actually, the game has moved on a long way from there now, and Man United, need to be a competing top 4 team and have a chance at the Champions League every season. Ten Hag pulled that off. They need to have a chance of winning it. I think that's where they need to be in terms of the status of the club. They're one of the 3 biggest clubs in the world, aren't they? I think probably fair to say. Some people might disagree. 3 or 4 at least. Not necessarily on recent form and recent performances, but in terms of the size of the club and so on, I would say they probably are. So, that being the case, they need to be Champions League contenders every season, and they need to be in the top 3 or 4 of the Premier League. Will they do it this season? I think the jury's out.
What, top 4?
Yeah, they might do, but it looks a stretch with the team they've got at the moment. That's why I said at the start. I think there's still some signing short of where they need to be.
I just can't see where they're going to get the goals from.
No.
Especially against, was it top 9 teams? They got 1 point away from the top 9 teams. That's already a quarter of your game. So that
exactly. That's what I mean. I just think they're not. They don't scare teams like they used to. That's the thing. Most teams now going up against Man United will be thinking, if we have a good day, we've got a chance here. It never used to be like that with them. And nothing about what they've done in the transfer window this summer makes me think they look any different, really. Yeah. They've signed a better goalkeeper, which they needed, but that isn't going to turn them from where they were into title contenders. It just means they're going to stop conceding perhaps as many silly goals, and the distribution will be a bit better. But yeah, I think they're going to do well if they can challenge the top three.
We'll do Chelsea, spending a little bit more dosh as well on Caicedo, definitely 115 million, who on his debut gave away a pen and therefore gave away West Ham to secure a win. Do you think Caicedo can improve? Do you think he can become a £115 million midfielder? Or
I've no idea. Is he 21? I've no idea really how you spend 115 million on a 21-year-old and know with absolute confidence that they're going to be worth that money in a few years' time. I think on paper Chelsea have a very, very good team.
Yeah.
On the pitch, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? That's been good signs. I mean, look, I think there's signs that Pochettino is doing some of the right things. In what I mean by that is he's got Sterling back to looking like a quality player again. He was pretty much non-existent last season, wasn't he? And he's had a summer with him, and now he looks like the player that Chelsea probably thought they bought. He's got the basis there of an incredibly strong midfield, and he's got a bunch of.
Chilwell back as well.
He's got Chilwell back, looking good. Reece James is obviously injured, but Gusto, who's is it Gusto? I think it is Gusto who's replaced him on that side, looks really good as well. They've got a bunch of young players. People like Gallagher, Chukwuemeka, really good player. Colwell at the back. The mix is there to have a really good Pochettino team. Experience and youth, good attacking players, good solid defensive midfield, and really good attacking fullbacks. If James can stay fit and Chilwell stays fit, arguably the two of the best attacking fullbacks in the league, who both can defend as well, which is quite rare for an attacking fullback. The basis is there, I think, for an incredibly good team. I just think it's going to take a while for him to get the mix right to make it really good. I think as the season goes on, if he's given time, he will succeed. But it comes back to the same question that we were just talking about with Man United. What is success for Chelsea? You know what I mean? Only one team can win the league every season, and it's going to be very hard to stop Man City. And only one team can win the Champions League.
They've not got Europe though.
Yeah, they haven't got Europe. Yeah. So, but I mean, looking to the future and so on. I think again, if you turn Chelsea into serious top 3, top 4 contenders again, that's a great achievement. Yeah. You can't only one team can win it every season.
I think they could ever get it back to the Mourinho era, so they were winning the league.
Well, I think they could, in that they've got an owner that's willing to basically just spend money like there's no tomorrow. Yeah. They've got one of the best managers in world football, and they've got the basis of a good team. Well, not even the basis. They've got some brilliant players, as I say, on paper. But I'll go back to what I said before. To keep up with Manchester City, you have to be a machine. You just have to win and win and win and win and win. We saw Arsenal do it until Christmas last season. They fell off. The season when Liverpool actually managed to pit them to the title, they had to go 100 points plus, didn't they? Yeah. Can Chelsea get into that sort of space with sort of the mix of the players they've got at the moment, and ultimately without a top quality striker? Probably not. If they're back in the mix for the top 6 this season, I think that's good enough for season 1 for Pochettino. Next season they'll be wanting to be back in the Champions League places.
Yeah. You could argue that they won the Champions League 2 years ago, and now they're here. I still don't understand why they sacked Tuchel, but I still think Pochettino is a very good replacement for him. Newcastle, who had that massive win against Villa, now sit 14th in the table with 2 losses, one to City, one to Liverpool. Although they're 1-0 up against Liverpool, and Liverpool have 10 men, so is that sort of a result? Do you think Newcastle can still live up to where they were last season in that sort of, or do you think that was mostly because of, not taking any credit away from Newcastle, but the teams around them? Spurs had a flop season, Liverpool, who only really started the season properly in the second half, Man United dropped off a bit, and you know, teams that would have been competing with Newcastle weren't really too much of a threat, and therefore Newcastle came third or fourth. Came third. Yeah,
I think so.
Do you still think they can be up there? With
I think they can. I think we saw the real Newcastle against Villa.
Yeah.
You know, it's still a bit of a freak result, beating Villa 5-1, but they are a very, very formidable team at home and a decent team away as well. Losing to Man City, disgrace. I've said enough about Man City already. 1-0. I think the Liverpool result will go down as a bit of a freak result in time. I don't expect, because they've lost to Liverpool, with 10 men, they're going to start losing all over the place to, teams they should be beating now. I just think that was an odd result, and they were undone by two brilliant finishes, played against them on the break. They should have finished Liverpool off. But, sometimes it's hard to beat 10 men, isn't it? And the team with 10 men sit back and hit you on the break, and actually that's exactly what Liverpool did, and it worked for them. I don't think that's going to be an indication of the season. I think they're going to have a very good season. When I say a very good season, I mean challenging for the top four and doing okay in the Champions League, which I think would be another good season for Newcastle. Yeah. The other thing you've got to remember is, if they are struggling, they've got all the money in the bank to go out and buy more players, and at the moment, everyone is talking about the incredible job that Eddie Howe has done of building a sensible team and building that team up, stage by stage, rather than doing a Chelsea and just bringing in, let's have 10 £100 million players. He's not doing that. He's trying to build a squad with a sort of philosophy that plays the way he wants to play football. But if that's not working, if Newcastle are sitting 8th or 9th come January, I'm sure the owners will go, okay, we need to move to the next spending stage now, and they'll be coming in for players that Eddie Howe wants, that that will take them to the next level faster. So I still expect them to compete with the top four. I don't think that Liverpool result will be a symbol of their season. It was a bad result, but I expect to see them bounce back. And as you say, they've had one of the hardest fixture starts to the season. They've still got a positive goal difference, and they've had one very good result, one bad one, and one expected one. They'll be fine.
Yeah. Everton, who are bottom, are looking very shaky. They can't score any goals by the looks of things. They let Wolves have a win at home against Wolves as well, which nobody expected. So they surely should have got a few goals against Wolves, but they didn't. They're playing Neil Maupay up top because they've not really got anyone else. And Neil Maupay, from the time he was at Brighton to now, has really gone downhill. I think Everton are in big trouble, and I think they can probably beat Luton and Burnley and Sheffield United, but even a good Burnley team can beat a good Everton team, and I think they're going to be in a very bad position this season in a bad relegation battle, that they're going to have to come up with some goals to get out of, really. Do you think they've...
I know it sounds crazy to say this because we are so early in the season, but I actually think the next 2 or 3 days are crucial for Everton. Because, they've just signed a striker, haven't they? Beto. I don't know much about him, but they've signed him, and I think he scored for them in the Cup, the other night, so that will give him confidence, and he might score some goals for them you know, you can't rule out that Calvert-Lewin might get his fitness back, come back and improve, because he is a good player. But no, as you say now, it's almost become, you know, it feels like at Everton now, failure to score goals has just become embedded in the way that they seem to be as a team. You know, you just don't expect them to go out there and blow teams away. With the way they play football, they work hard. I think Dyche has got them well organised, and you know, I know the stats from that Wolves game suggested they should have scored, you know, 3 or 4 probably, but they don't, and that's a problem. I said the next 2 or 3 days for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I think they've got to do some more business in the transfer window. I know there's talk of them possibly having either Danny Ings or Cornet from West Ham. I think either of those would be really good signings for Everton actually. Cornet's worked with Sean Dyche before at Burnley, and I think he'll get the best out of him. Ings is, you know, doesn't really suit West Ham's style. I think he would suit Everton's better, and so I think that could work. But whether either of those signings come off for them, you know, there's talk of possibly Alex Iwobi leaving. That would be a bad loss for them, because he's got one of the rare brighter sparks. And then when the transfer window closes, you know, hopefully from an Everton point of view, they've got some players in to bolster the squad, but then they play Sheffield United. You know, now if they can beat Sheffield United, then it's a wobbly start to the season that could improve. If they lose to Sheffield United and, you know, the season starts with 3 defeats, all against, you know, well, probably, you know, what was it, Wolves, Villa and Sheffield United, and they haven't taken a single point from any of them. You know, if that happens and they haven't made any more big signings that you think could make a difference, you'd be looking at it and just going, where are the results coming from? Can this team get to 40 points?
Yeah.
And I think it might be a struggle, and you know, I'm a bit surprised really, because I thought Dyche did well last season and made him a tougher team to beat, but they just don't seem to have found the right combination to score goals. Maybe Beto will be.
I mean, 40 points is looking big for Everton now.
It's certainly looking big if, you know, if they get nothing out of Sheffield United, you know, and then, you know, it's just.
I don't know where the points really come from.
You know, so we'll see. They're again, you know, you don't want to rule them out too early. Well, I don't think it's right to rule them out, because they've got a manager that knows how to avoid relegation. They've got some good players. But like I say, they've got to make some signings, and they really have to get something out of Sheffield United. Otherwise, the mood around Everton as well will just be awful.
I mean, in the last 2 years, they've only managed to just escape relegation on the last few game weeks. But yeah, I think this will be the season they go down. It's early to expect, but that's exactly what I predicted, and I'm going to stick with it. So,
okay, fair enough.
I don't think there's any other teams we need to go through.
Villa, maybe.
Villa,
they were their top half, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think they're going to have a very good season. I think it would have been an even better season if they hadn't lost Buendia, and particularly Mings. Mings is a big loss for them. He's a leader. But, you know, I think what's happened is they lost that game to Newcastle, got hammered, and it's almost like things have gone quiet with them now, because people have stopped thinking, oh, Villa are going to be contenders. But they then won their next 2 games convincingly, you know, made easy work of Everton.
Which anyone can do.
Yes, they did. Yeah, which anyone can do. But then, you know, didn't they score 4 goals? Who did they beat last? I can't remember. But they beat Everton, won their next game. They put 5 against past Everton. You know, everyone's kind of gone quiet on them because of that Newcastle loss. But I think they're going to be a really good team this season. You know, they've got 6 points from 3 games. Their only defeat is at Newcastle, which is not a surprise.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be up there.
And that wasn't really Villa's doing. They weren't rubbish. It was just Newcastle.
They just sprung them, didn't they? With you know, found their weakness and exploited it. So yeah, I think it's going to be. It was 3-0, wasn't it, against Burnley? 3-1 against Burnley.
Yeah.
That was the result. They beat Everton 4-0 and 3-1 against Burnley, and then won 5-1 against Hibs. So that was it. I think they scored 12 goals in 3 games. So that's not a bad way to come back from a 5-1 defeat. They look like a very good team to me, and Emery clearly knows what he's doing in Europe as well, so he won't fall sort of foul of what some teams we've talked about doing, where they've got Thursday and Sunday and they struggle. I think his Villa team will manage that well, and it's going to be a good season for them. I think they'll be certainly top half and maybe challenging for top 6.
Yeah, no, that's a fair judgment. Any other teams really? I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
Brentford as well.
Those are the main ones. Yeah, Brentford. Yeah. Yeah, interesting with Brentford, isn't it? Because everybody's kind of thinking with Tony gone that they would struggle a little bit, especially the type of football they play. But Wissam and Wemmer,
they've seen it come on as well. Brighton have lost Caicedo and McAllister, they're fine.
West Ham lost Declan Rice,
and we seem alright at the moment. And now Brentford lost Tony in there.
I mean, it shows, doesn't it, that you can have star players and you can build teams around star players, and of course, if you lose star players, it makes a difference. Yeah. Okay. But if you've got a system and a manager that knows the system they want to play, and you've got players that fit the system, sometimes that's bigger than having star names. And you see that with Brentford, they've got a system that works. You've seen it with West Ham now, playing a different type of football. Declan Rice has gone, we're hitting teams on the break. Completely see it with Brighton, they just lose one star player and replace another one in the system. I think there's a lot to be said for teams that have got good systems with managers who can slot players in rather than having lots of star players.
Yeah. So do you think Brentford can? They were 8th last season, weren't they? Do you think they can improve any more of that?
I don't expect them to finish higher than 8th, but that's not a criticism of Brentford. It's just because I think there are easily 7 teams that will get more points than them over the course of the season.